This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by
shire.efoodsglobal.com.
We need to change our attitudes. We need to change our attitudes about the welfare state. We need to change our attitude about the warfare state. And we need to change our attitude about allowing our federal government to undermine our personal liberties and our personal lives. There's been a healthy move on for the reviving of the issue of nullification. I consider that very healthy. Not only should the states have a right to nullify unconstitutional laws passed by the federal government, we could start, and one thing that has brought this to our attention has been the Obamacare. So we could start by nullifying Obamacare. This is becoming more appropriate and people are thinking this way is because for so long everybody thought, well, the federal government's going to take care of me from cradle to grave, it'll never be a problem. But they're starting to realize it's not that way anymore. We don't know how long all the gravy is going to last. So they're much more cautious about it and they don't trust it. And now they're challenging it. But we should have a system where the states have more to say. It was intended that individuals had sovereignty, local communities did, and in most of the states. But the federal government was not meant to run the lives of the states and run the states or run the lives of us as individuals. So, how we ever got involved in allowing the government to decide what we should eat and drink and smoke and everything else. I don't know how that happened, but it's about time the American people should say that our personal activities should be treated like we treat our First Amendment. We legalize, and generally we understand the legalization of the First Amendment says that you can speak out on issues, and the purpose of the amendment is to protect controversial speech. So true liberty means that the federal government should protect controversial personal activity as long as you don't hurt people, and the government should stay out of our lives. You know, if that were the case, just think, the federal government couldn't have any regulations on drinking raw milk. You know, and also it would mean that the people of this country could grow this very, very dangerous product called hemp. We're not even talking about marijuana. All we're talking about is commercial hemp to make rope, and it's illegal in this country. And not only that is they worry about these programs for energy. Oh, we got to be energy independent. So we can't build nuclear power plants, and we can't do this, and we got to send troops to protect our oil, and we're going to subsidize ethanol and raise corn and push up prices and do all these things. And then it never dawns on them that there's probably more ethanol in hemp than there is in corn, and they make it illegal. So, well, there is some good news, and the good news is that the country's waking up and there will be a change and we're going to have an opportunity. The bad news is it's still a mess in Washington. The Tea Party movement has been helpful, but there's no true revolution in Washington. But I sense there's a true revolution going on in grassroots America. We have to have a better understanding and more confidence in ourselves and in the principles of liberty. That's one thing I believe the founders understood. They did not set up a welfare state. They did not set up a funny money system. They believed that only gold and silver were legal tender. They didn't encourage it, they discouraged it, and didn't give us the authority to police the world. And we virtually have lost that. We have good traditions. We have good traditions about property ownership. But do we really follow them? I mean, we don't have property ownership. You know, not too long ago, I went to build a house in a little town in Lake Jackson, Texas, and you'd be surprised. No, I don't think you'd be surprised. I had to check with the federal government for about 15 regulations on how high the house should be and what kind of lumber I was going to use and everything else. So we are regulated to death, and we're taxed to death, and then they say we own the property, but we only own the property because we have to be liable for the mistakes they make. So, the principle of property ownership really could, if you fold that through, you don't need a whole lot else. If you really protected private property, it would protect your First Amendments. And just think, you know, owning a gun is a piece of property. You should be protected in owning a gun, you know. Believed in private property ownership, but they really believed in the ownership of guns. That's why they stuck that Second Amendment in there to make sure we understood. So we are at a point now where financially we're in trouble. We don't know what's going to happen. The dollar is in trouble. It's going to get in worse trouble. I think something internationally is going on. I think there's a coming together. I think there's one of the reasons why you're seeing so many revolts in the Middle East is not only are they sick and tired of their dictatorships and our puppet governments over there, which they've been for a long time, but I think what they're sensing that we may be a financial paper tiger, maybe even militarily. Yes, in a conventional war, we have more weapons and we spend more money than everybody else put together, and nobody's ever going to attack us, which should make us more secure rather than insecure. But I think people are thinking there's a limit to what the United States can do. You know, how many more troops can they call up? They have troops, you know, in Iraq and Afghanistan, and you know, we're worried about some people killed in Libya, and we should, you know, be not very sympathetic to that. But in the last couple of years, we killed over 2,000 civilians in Pakistan with our drone missiles. And what are we doing? And, you know, they see the inconsistency. Some Americans see the inconsistency, but we've been taught that if you say anything about policy, oh, that means you're un-American. You're not supporting the troops. You're not a patriotic person. Well, I think being patriotic is challenging your government when it's wrong and not going in the wrong way. The world are feeling their oats and they understand what kind of problem we have. I think the Chinese are aware of it. The Chinese sell weapons as well, but they, you know, those are terrible people over there. You know, they actually make stuff and sell it to us, make profits, and they save the money. And then they go and they invest their money. Yes, they're around the world buying up stuff almost like a capitalist. But what are we doing? We're going and saying, you know, look, we have investments made in Libya, and we have to protect those investments. That's what's been going on. But I believe it's coming to an end. And it's coming to an end, and they understand our financial conditions and our inability to continue to police the world. It's less popular. There will be too many fires in the world.
Delicious, inexpensive, storable with a 15-year shelf life in most cases. What is it? It is shire.efoodsglobal.com. Try a bite or order with all your might, straight from the site. You can even get free samples there. Or let Kurt and Auburn hand you some. shire.efoodsglobal.com.